The chemistry laboratory can be a place of discovery and learning. However, by the very nature of laboratory work, it can be a place of danger if proper common sense precautions aren't taken. This video is designed to introduce you to some of the hazards that are common in the chemistry laboratory and what you as a student or worker needs to know in order to safely work in the laboratory. In this video, you will learn about the laboratory and the items common to the lab, personnel protective equipment used in the laboratory, general laboratory rules and conduct, housekeeping and disposal of materials, and emergency procedures. As you look around the laboratory, you may notice items that require specialized training to use. Make sure you have this specialized training prior to using any equipment. The laboratory is usually made up of several workbenches where experiments and work take place. There are storage areas for equipment such as glassware, scales, and other items, and separate areas for storage of chemicals that are considered non-hazardous, along with other areas that contain items that could be considered hazardous. There are sinks, gas outlets for Bunsen or Meeker burners, fume hoods that eliminate hazardous fumes, and scales. There can be refrigerators, freezers, compressed gas cylinders, and electrical cords that can present hazards. In addition to the normal things in the lab, there is safety equipment such as fire extinguishers, eye wash and shower stations, and a fire blanket. Before you begin to work in the lab, become familiar with all aspects of the lab. If you don't know how to use a piece of equipment, perform a procedure, or anything related to the chemistry lab, stop before you proceed and contact your teacher or supervisor. Always leave the lab as you have found it. Remember that a clean laboratory is usually a safe laboratory. Eye protection is a mandatory requirement in the chemistry lab. Safety glasses or goggles, sometimes called chemical splash goggles, must be worn at all times in the laboratory. This rule should be followed whether you are actually working on an experiment or simply writing in your lab notebook. The goggles can be worn over your own glasses. However, contact lenses are not allowed. Even when worn under safety goggles, various fumes may accumulate under the lens and cause serious injuries or blindness. In situations where there is a potential of a corrosive chemical being splashed into the eyes, safety glasses or goggles and a face shield are required. In situations where there is a potential for an explosion to occur, head shields are required in addition to safety glasses or goggles. Closed-toe shoes and long pants must be worn in the lab. Sandals and shorts are not allowed. You should always wear durable clothing that covers the arms, legs, torso, and feet while in the chemistry lab. To protect clothing and skin from chemical damage, wear a lab apron and long sleeves or a lab coat. Of the ways chemicals can affect the human body, exposure through skin contact is one of the most significant. Long hair should be tied back to keep it from coming into contact with lab chemicals or flames. Under normal situations, our hands are the body parts most likely to be exposed to chemical contact. Even though careful technique may help an employee or student avoid direct contact with a chemical, the potential for exposure still demands the use of protective gloves. Always use appropriate gloves for the situation, such as rubber gloves, insulated hand mitts for heat-related work, or while handling dry ice, and the use of barrier creams as needed. There are times that a respirator may be used. Make sure you are properly fit tested for the respirator and you have the knowledge on how to use it properly. Never eat, drink, or smoke while in the laboratory. Not only can you cause cross-contamination, hazardous materials can easily enter your body. Never perform unauthorized experiments or alter experiments or procedures. If you are curious about trying a procedure not covered in the experimental procedure, consult with your laboratory instructor. Never taste anything while in the laboratory. Do not chew gums or breath mints. Never directly smell the source of any vapor or gas. Instead, by means of your cupped hand, waft a small sample to your nose. Do not inhale these vapors, but take in only enough to detect an odor if one exists. Coats, backpacks, etc. should not be left on the lab benches and stools. Hang these items on hooks or racks. Beware that certain lab chemicals can destroy personal possessions. Do not wear jewelry while working with chemicals. Learn where the safety and first aid equipment is located. This includes fire extinguishers, fire blankets, and eye wash stations. An open flame may be ignited only when no flammable solvents are in the vicinity. The person lighting the flame must check with other persons in the vicinity to see if they are working with flammable solvents. When handling volatile, flammable solvents such as ether, acetone, or methanol, exercise great caution. Never evaporate these solvents on a hot plate or in an open system. An efficient condenser system must be used. If chemicals splash into someone's eyes, act quickly and get them to the eye wash station and have them flush out their eyes. Never pipette using mouth suction. Never force glass tubing through a rubber stopper. If glass tubing must be inserted into a rubber stopper, be sure to lubricate both the stopper and the tubing using glycerol or soapy water. Protect your hands. Wrap the glass tubing in a towel while inserting. Always know what chemicals you are using. Do not use chemicals from unlabeled containers. Consider all chemicals to be hazardous unless you are otherwise instructed. Material Safety Data Sheets, MSDS, are available in lab for all chemicals in use. These will inform you of any hazards and precautions of which you should be aware. Carefully read the label twice before taking anything from a bottle. Chemicals in the lab are marked with special hazardous material labels. Learn how to interpret these labels. Excess reagents are never to be returned to stock bottles. If you take too much, properly dispose of the excess. Always pour acids into water. If you pour water into acid, the heat of reaction will cause the water to explode into steam, sometimes violently, and the acid will splatter. Fume hoods provide constant respiratory protection. Such protection is adequate for most controlled experiments. Lowering the sash will increase air velocity and offer greater protection from toxic fumes. Normally, the sash opening should be less than 18 inches. Placing equipment no less than 6 inches inside the hood will also reduce the possibility of fumes escaping into the laboratory. Beware of hot glass. It looks exactly like cold glass. Do not oil, grease, or work on unprotected machinery in motion. All machinery and equipment under repair and adjustment shall be properly locked out and tagged. Never leave burners unattended. Turn them off whenever you leave your workstation. Always wash your hands before you leave the lab. The laboratory should be kept clean and free from clutter by regular maintenance. At the completion of each experiment, equipment should be cleaned and properly stored. Do not let unused equipment or chemicals accumulate in the lab. Do not use the aisles of the lab or the space in front of doors for storage. Reagent bottles must be properly labeled. When pouring, hold the bottle with its label to your palm to protect the label. Notify your supervisor or instructor of bottles whose contents are in doubt. Clean up all broken glassware immediately and dispose of the broken glass properly. If a spill occurs, use a spill kit to properly absorb any chemicals. If you are uncomfortable in cleaning up the spill yourself, ask your supervisor or instructor for assistance. The used materials from the kit should be kept in the lab under a fume hood and should be treated as a hazardous waste. Do not use a cart without side rails for transporting reagents in glass bottles, even when the bottles are in rubber buckets, since the buckets may fall from the cart and the bottles may break. Never dump anything down the sink unless you are instructed to do so. Many labs have specific waste disposal rules. Be familiar with these rules. For example, oils and other organics may have special containers located in the lab for their disposal. Syringes and other sharps may be disposed of in sharps containers. Check with your supervisor or instructor as to the proper disposal procedure of other chemicals. If there is a fire in the laboratory and it can't be controlled by a fire extinguisher, call 911 or pull the emergency fire alarm and evacuate the building. In the event of a serious emergency such as fire, explosion, or release of hazardous gas, the building must be evacuated. This requirement is not only to remove those present in the building from potential hazard, but to clear the way for firemen or others who are responsible for handling the emergency. Each person working regularly in a laboratory or teaching laboratory should be familiar with the current evacuation route from that area and should get out as soon as an evacuation order is given. Do not delay. This has been a brief introduction to safety in the chemistry laboratory. Each laboratory will have its own set of rules. Remember the rules and follow them. It could save your life.
For information about this or other Tell Me How programs, please write to TMW Media Group, 2321 Abbott Kinney Boulevard, Suite 101, Venice, California 90291, or find us on the web at www.tmwmedia.com.